Hey, Simon Pei, Malachas Asuras B'Shabbos. We're up to Pei Zion. Make a siyum on this long Simon. Also, Lashmiya Kol Shashir B'Shabbos B'Kli Avei Vorov. You are not allowed to make a sound of music with a utensil or with your limbs, chutz mi piv, except for your mouth. Meaning, so no drumming on your body, snapping your fingers in order to make music. Um, Now, for some reason, the world thinks that it's also to whistle on Shabbos. I have no idea why, because I mean, he says here you can make sounds with your mouth. Not only that, Poskim say you can even whistle with your putting your fingers into your mouth is okay, right? So, but obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, but no harmonica. Harmonica would not be allowed. Even to snap your fingers one on the other, or onto a wood board, or to shake a walnut, a zug, or a bell. Latina that's also not allowed. So those rattles and all those things are not allowed for kids. You can't clap hand on hand, and you can't dance. But the cover Torah, you're allowed to clap and dance. And those that make noise for a baby so that they shouldn't cry, and there's no machak, since there are those that are matir. So then you have, of course, the people that if you do it kalachayad, you do it backwards, and you're allowed to. That's why you see those people clapping with the back of their hand. Now, clapping as applause, that seemingly is okay. This is just for music purposes. Teiches kol shein derech shir mutar lashmiya. So a voice that's not derech shir that you're allowed to do. So the question is like a rattle, is that okay? Because that's not really for music. All right. That's why you're allowed to knock on the door in order they should open it for you. But some say you can't use a like a door knocker because that's meant to make that noise. To hit the door with the ring that's on there. See, he calls it a tabas. Is that where they got the ring doorbell from? I wonder. Right? Or with a bell that's miyuchav with that. Those clocks, shine and zayger that they ring on the hour, they chime as they say. That they push it, or they pull a string that's miyuchad for that. Ain't lost is So you understand that you shouldn't use anything that's meant to make that type of noise. Then you shouldn't do. Let's say you're watching the fruits and vegetables because of wild animals. You shouldn't clap your hands together. And you shouldn't clap your hands on your thigh. And don't dance with your feet to chase them away. The same way you do it during the week. You're not allowed to play with nuts on the ground. This is like marbles. Even if it's paved. Don't make a macha against women and minors who do this. Because they won't listen to you. And it's better that they should do it b'shayig than to do it b'mezid. So this klal of rather let somebody do it by mistake than to do it on purpose is only said by things that are not obvious in the Torah. But if it's things that are obvious in the Torah, then you do have to say. Also, it says this by the making music with your hands on Shabbos. It says I'm not sure why the Kitzur doesn't bring that. How come he only says don't make a macha against Noshim and Katanim? So I think Pashat is because those are the only ones that play games. Adults are busy learning or sleeping or doing something productive, right? But because they have Torah to do, not that women are usually doing more productive things on Shabbos than men. But the point is that it's nashim and ketanim, because why would any man ever be doing this? That's a little bit, a little backdoor mussar. Fine. But or you could say that no, what he means is nashim and ketanim is because men will know that it's awesome and they won't be doing it. Okay, fine. Tzadi but Indian keep begadim, folding clothing. Yesh harbe chilukidim. There's many different dinim. Ve'ein lekapel shum beged. You just don't fold clothing and finished. That's the simplest way. But okay, the pasha way is that if you fold it not on the creases, then it's okay. Tzadi beis talis shenechas ba'or. If you have a talis that went on fire, mutalishbach shar mashkim, you can pour other liquids, shalei b'makam me'esh, meaning pour other liquids, not water, as we'll say, because on the other part of the clothing, that when the fire hits the liquid, then it'll go out. But you can't pour water on there. Like we've said many times, when you pour water on clothing, that can make the clothing, that's considered laundering the clothing, which is awesome. You're not allowed to make a bed from Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos. That's what we call hachana, because you're preparing. Right? Now, why is hachana awesome? Either because it's a tircha on Shabbos, you're working on Shabbos and there's no need, or because of it cheapens Shabbos, because you're busy on Shabbos doing things for weekday. Those are the two main reasons. And it's a big machlokes of paiskim whether a guy has this isser, because l'chayr none of these isurim would apply to a guy. We don't care about a guy's tircha on Shabbos, and it's not a bizayin for a guy to be working on Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos. So if there's a big need, then you could do hachana with a guy. Okay, and also if you want to make your bed on Shabbos because you like the way it looks, legitimately like the way it looks, then it's also okay. So even though you can theoretically take a nap in that bed, since you don't have das to sleep in them Shabbos, that's like preparing from Shabbos to Chol, the Aser, and it is Aser. Okay, Siman Pei Aleph. Arba Rishuyas the Shabbos. There's 4 different Rishuyas for Shabbos. This is where you get into the whole carrying from the house to the street. Uboy Hey Sifim, and there's 5 Sifim on this. So Arba Rishuyas the Shabbos. There's 4 Rishuyas for Shabbos. Shasayachid, Shasaravim, Carmelis, Umakam Ptur. Right, so it's the private property, public property. Carmelis is a no man's land, meaning that's somewhere between Shasayach and Shasarabim. And then there's Makam Patur, which is also a form of no man's land. But it's even less, it's more makel than Carmelis. And the Kitzur is going to explain some of it. So Ezer Shasayach, what's considered private property? It has to have 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. But the reason why it needs to be 4 tefachim, because if it's less than 4 tefachim, that's not anything considerable. And it's surrounded with high mechitzas, at the minimum 10 tefachim high. Even if they're not complete. And you have a hole that's 10 tefachim deep. And 4 tefachim wide, also is like a mechitza. And the same thing with a hole. It's 10 deep and 4 wide. Tel and a hill. It's 10 tefachim high. And it's 4 by 4 wide. Even a kli, teva, like a box, or it's a barrel that's round, and if you would stretch it, into a square, it would be 4 by 4. All these items, even if they're in Rishus Harabim or in a Carmelis, are nechlakas la'atzman, they're considered separated onto themselves, and they're considered a Rishus HaYachid. That's why if you ever have that scenario where you're out of an Eruv and you find that you're carrying something, so you don't stop and you put it down on something considerable, So that might be considered Rosh Hashanah. The Carmelists, I don't know, maybe we'll get to it, maybe we won't, not tonight, certainly. But again, you could have a box or a hill in Rosh Hashanah, and that itself will be considered Rosh Hashanah. The airspace over Rosh Hashanah is considered Rosh Hashanah up until the heavens. Masha'enkin Rosh Hashanah only goes up to 10 tfachim. Above 10 tfachim is no longer Rosh Hashanah. That's why if you may throw something from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah and it stays over 10 tfachim in Rosh Hashanah, it is more lenient. And the boundaries and the walls or fences that are surrounding Rosh Hashanah, al gabein gamkein din Rosh Hashanah, on top of the fence is also Rosh Hashanah. What happens if you have, because back then they had cement walls. So what about the holes inside the walls? So the holes that are in the mechitzas that are towards the private property, even if they're completely open from one end to the other end, and you could see through it to the Rosh Hashanah, since you're able to use these holes from Rosh Hashanah, it's considered batal v'nachshavim Rosh Hashanah, and they're considered like a Rosh Hashanah. But if the opening of these walls only opens up to Rosh Hashanah, yispar b'sif shalachas, and then we will explain that in the next sif, which we'll do Be'ezus Hashem tomorrow. Okay, everybody should have a fine night. Shei b'suras tovos.